All right, Jen, thank you so much. And good morning, AxCon. Hey, it's great to see everybody here today. I'm so very excited for AxCon 2024. If you're like me, you got a couple of these under your belt already. I know I enjoyed the first three. Well, two and a half, I had to leave Laney's a little bit early. I had to come over and get ready here. But as we always promise, we bring you only the best. And so today we've got a very special treat. A couple of accessibility program superstars, in fact, have launched and built six programs between them. We've got three programs each, so I don't know. We'll have a competition to see who gets the number four here. But today they're going to talk about programs and how they have achieved these phenomenal results. But first, I want to introduce the both of them to you. I've got Gurpreet Kaur from Mastercard, and I've got Mike Shebanek from I want to say Facebook, but it's not Facebook. It's Meta from Meta. See, look at there. I got my card wrong. But anyway, we're going to get started here. And first, I want to turn it over to Gurpreet and let her tell you a little bit more about herself. Before I do that, though, I almost forgot a little self description here. I am a white male. I identify as he, him. I've got enough gray in my beard to suggest that I'm a grandfather and fabulously handsome, at least in my own mind. So, Gurpreet, I'll turn it over to you and let's kick it off.
Thank you. Before I introduce myself, I accept the challenge. I will hit the fourth before Mike does. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, put down the gauntlet. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Publicly accepted. Okay. Gurpreet, pronouns she, hers. I'm identify as a person with disability and a woman of color. I'm from Indian origin. I've about 20 years of corporate career underneath me, and the past decade specifically focused on accessibility. How I got started on this journey was my son, who's 14 now. He was about 4.5 years is when he got diagnosed with ADHD. And my roller coaster journey of trying to understand, disabilities and the world around us and what society and corporation responsibility is to remove the barriers around people with disabilities started about 10 years or so ago. And I started as a director of accessibility with Charter Communications. I worked there for about 8 years. And then I moved on to Twitter, now X, as global head of accessibility and disability inclusion. So I did that for a couple of years. And then last year I started in Mastercard as VP of accessibility and inclusive design. So that's a little bit about me. I guess are we moving on to Mike before we kind of talk about our roles in our current companies, or should I keep going?
Well, I mean, we've got a competition now. Now that we've got a competition, we probably should let Mike jump in, and then we'll jump back there. So, Mike.
Yeah, the elbows are flying quick here. I love it. That's great. Good to have you here, Gurpreet. And we'll see how that turns out, the number four one. I am Mike Shebanek, older white male with red hair, wear glasses, have a goatee beard. Happy to be with you today and look forward to this conversation. So let's see. I think I started my career with about 10 years at a university environment in academic and administrative computing support. Then moved over to Apple eventually, and I think a lot of people know me from my work developing the voiceover screen reader, and that was really the kickoff for me into accessibility and sort of rebooting the Apple accessibility program after it'd been latent for about 10 years. That eventually led me over to Yahoo, where I was head of Yahoo, also in Silicon Valley. That went through an interesting transformation because it was bought by Verizon and became Verizon Media, then spun back out to Yahoo after I left. So some interesting corporate things going on there. I can talk a little bit about how to navigate that. And then over the last 4 years have been the head of accessibility at Meta, as Greg mentioned, formerly known as Facebook. So it's been a quite interesting journey and lots of, I'm sure, anecdotes and stories to share along the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. So, Gurpreet, as you mentioned there a minute ago, talk a little bit about your current duties because, as we all know, and I know this too from the programs that I've worked on, there's different things we're all responsible for. So, why don't you, if you could, go ahead and tell us a few things about what your responsibilities are there at Mastercard, and then Mike will jump back to you for the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, so my title in Mastercard is VP Accessibility and Inclusive Design. And my remit is to lead our global accessibility efforts as part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion team. Been with Mastercard, like I said, for about a year ago. There has been a lot of grassroots level effort. It's a global company, very much business focused. So I've been hired to assess our overall landscape of disability inclusion, accessibility, where our legal obligations are, where our contractual obligations are, look at our strengths and our opportunities, and figure out our corporate-wide go forward future strategy as far as accessibility is concerned. My remit is both on the people and the product side of the house. And so the vision statement that I've created is to create experiences that are accessible for employees, candidates, as well as customers and consumers with disabilities for MasterCard.
Thank you. Awesome. Mike?
Yeah, that does sound awesome, actually. Fun to hear that description. So I had my remit is primarily on the product and technology side. So I'm not responsible for the human resources, people group, that sort of thing. We have an amazing team of people that are responsible for that. So my background is as a product manager for about 18 years at Apple. So I really look at the world sort of through the lens of how is a product built? How was the experience of it? How do we bring it to market? How do we explain it and market it and support that in the marketplace? So my role now is as head of accessibility. We have a centralized team across Meta. We're also a global company, very large scale, as you can imagine. We make, by the way, just to make sure everybody's clear, we make Facebook and Instagram, but we're also the makers of WhatsApp and Messenger. We make the Quest VR headset. We make the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. So we have both hardware and software products in multiple languages across multiple geographies around the world. My role as head of accessibility is primarily to be an advocate. And I think of it that way. I don't know if it's written down that way, but that's how I bring myself to the role. And it's really to make sure that people with disabilities and their needs are represented at the executive level, in technical meetings, in product roadmaps. And my team is really responsible for making sure that happens as well. If we get down to sort of the real fundamentals, my team is responsible for making sure that we are able to measure, that we're able to bring the right tools to bear, and that we have the best techniques and training in the company, and certainly we want to be in the world. So those are sort of the fundamentals of what we do as a team. And of course, a lot of the work happens outside our team in the product group. So no matter, we'll get into this, I'm sure, maybe we get into this now, but in any case, any company I've been at, the central accessibility team, if you're lucky enough to have one, is never huge. It's always a real small sliver of the entirety of the corporation. And so very quickly you learn as head of accessibility that your job is to find ways to scale you and scale the message and scale those measurement systems and techniques across that company so that people who are actually building those products and thinking about the next generation of products sort of already have in their head the things you would say, hey, let's make sure we remember this. Hey, let's make sure we're building for accessibility, let's make sure we're testing well, and those sorts of things. So that's, for me, I think kind of the key thing to keep in mind is you're never going to be enough just yourself. You really have to figure out ways to scale your message and get people to understand this and be able to act on their own. That's how you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
Right. If I can add something to that, sorry, behind you, I was going to say.
No, go ahead.
I say accessibility is not everyone's job, and the ideal state, which I don't know, 50 years, 100 years down the line, should be that there shouldn't be accessibility team, right? Accessibility should be something that everybody should be embracing and integrating into their daily jobs. And I couldn't agree more with Mike, right? Like the way I approach establishing an accessibility practice, at least in my head, is also, focusing on people, focusing on technology, focusing on processes. And then, I guess the underlying part is what are the skill building opportunities that you can enable people to actually be able to do that work. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, that's a
No,
great.
good.
I was going to add too quickly. I think one of the things that it's easy to get caught up in is this sort of dichotomy between, do we want people to become true believers, or do we just want them to get the work done? And I think that's been one of the really interesting lessons for me along the way, because when I first started, I wanted everybody to be as passionate and caring and empathetic and innovative and thoughtful about disability and access as me. Right. And I think that certainly needs to be there, especially if you're head of accessibility. If you can't be that person, then you need to find another role. Like that is your role, right? To make sure people understand that. But I think also the thing I've learned over time is in many cases, people don't have to effectively be quote unquote true believers. We just need them to do it right, get the work done, make sure it's accessible, build correctly. And if you need to move on to your other part of your role, that's fine too. There has to be some core set of people, I think, that are truly passionate and have that. And certainly on an essential accessibility team, we see that all over the place. Like it's just gushing. And I think we get comments from people like, wow, you guys are really into this, more so than maybe people are into their other roles. People work for jobs for different reasons, to earn a paycheck, to feed their family, to to accomplish goals, those sorts of things. But so we have to respect that. I mean, that's part of the thing here. Like for us and our central, we're all here about accessibility and access and equality and inclusion. So those are some of the things. But I don't know if you have the same experience, Gurpreet, or it's been more about like that's been a central part of the culture change.
So yes and no. I just want to underline something for any accessibility practitioners or somebody who's getting started on their journey for what you just said, which is, yes, you want to start with empathy. Yes, you want to share lived experiences in the spaces on the table where it's normally not talked about, all of that true. But I think what you just said, it took me a while to learn that. And I think I just want to double underline that for everybody is the goal should not be to change everybody's behavior and minds. Yes, you do want to do that because true skill building will not happen without that behavior change. But it's not just from storytelling, which is a crucial part. It's also from the structure, right? The priority has to be there. I mean, we'll talk more into it and kind of deep dive. I'll give it back to GW for his question.
Sorry, Greg, we were included here too.
Oh, no, that's absolutely fine. And thanks to both of you for that good snapshot of who you are and who you were at the companies before. I think it's very important for people to understand that, especially when they think about positioning themselves into wanting to do this type of work. And Mike, you talk about how into it. I always people say, "Boy, you're really into this, aren't you?" Or how enthusiastic people get about this. There's such a concrete connection with good. I mean, before I came to DQ, which is now becoming many years ago, I worked in property, casualty, financial. Very sexy, exciting industry. Not really, but in retiring there and coming here and making this, my life go, what do I want to do with the rest of my career? It really gives me something concrete to do. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you guys describe your teams as being enthusiastic and emotional and just really bound into that. But now let's dig down into the magic, right? Because again, 6 programs across 3 each of you with big, complex, successful companies. Obviously, you figured something out, right? Or you're figuring something out, or you've got something there. So let's talk a little bit about, the things you've learned as you've gone throughout, these 3 opportunities each. The things you've found that are like portable from one organization to another, or even the ways that you're able to adapt what strategies might have worked, at the previous company or might have worked the previous job into now. So let's get into a little bit of that magic and share some of those things that are going to help our listeners and our the folks that are tuned in here really understand how to get this going in their organization. And I think I'll start first with Mike this time.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Well, it's a great question. And I think that when I first got into this, I was sort of, what you said, we figured this out. I think Gurpreet would probably agree with me. I don't know that we feel like we figured it out. It might seem that way. It might look that way from the outside, but I think that's part of the interesting part of the work is I don't think we ever really quite get there. Like, oh, I got this dial. Like you just ask me anything, I got an answer. I think this is part of the fun and the joy of it is that you always have to keep learning and keep adapting. And that adaptability, as I've learned, has been really key. I think the big mistake was trying to take the cookie cutter from the first role and say, oh, it's just going to be like this. Everything I learned, I'll just lay it down in the next company and this is how it works. And it was super successful. And that was a disaster. And so very quickly, I think the take home message for me was there's already a certain culture that's built into every community and certainly at companies, like at Apple, it was always about innovation. What's the next new cool thing you can do? At Yahoo for me, and as I thought about that culture, it was about sort of the entertainment and social part of computing, not the productivity part. Like they didn't make a word processor, a spreadsheet, or database. They did things like fantasy sports and Yahoo News. And so, and they only made software. And so it was a really interesting sort of like, how do I take, what are those principles that worked? And then how do I remap them to this new culture? And then at Meta, of course, we do both hardware and software, but it's not really a platform company, right? It's more of a social media company. So everything's about community and building community and being heard, having a voice, sharing and things like that. So it's been really interesting to try to figure out like what are the key principles here and then map them to those cultures because those cultures are natural accelerators. When you're opposite the culture, things are slowing down, there's friction. When you're in line with the culture, it speeds up. And I think that's been one of the things that's been the trickiest to figure out. It takes a little while, right? That's some work there. that doesn't mean to say that you don't change the culture as you go, right? So if a culture doesn't have an understanding or an acclamation of accessibility, you have to inject that and you have to steer that in a certain direction. And I think, as Gurpreet was saying, you have to sort of effectively build an expectation and an infrastructure and sort of a feedback system so that it can start to amplify on its own. Because if you have really excited people, but the culture is against you and the tools aren't there and the measurement's not happening and you're not getting feedback, you're not going anywhere. And eventually those people will burn out. So you have to lay down some really strong tracks and foundation to make these things successful over time. You need those super excited people certainly to drive, especially early on.
Right. If I can add to that, I agree with both the points, Mike, you made. I think Lainey Feingold gives the example of, blueberry muffins. Right, when
Great
she,
example, by the way.
right. And I want to take it one step further, which is there is no one recipe to make that blueberry muffin the most awesome way. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. That has been
Boy,
hands
that's
down.
true. Can you say that again?
Write that one down. Say that again so everybody gets it.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Nice.
Between Mike and I, we've
Totally.
learned that every day over my past 10 years, you can have the strongest strategy, business use case. And yes, that is important. And the data, and the dollars and the penalties and the number of customers, all of that. Yes, it's important. But it's equally important to understand the organism you're part of, how that organism works, what are the strengths, what are the opportunities. And I think the second part I want to underline, Mike, what you said is, I think the problem statement in folks, in our head, which we're trying to figure out every day, is what is that healthy amount of disruption? There has to be disruption, otherwise our role would not exist, right? Our role is to look at how things are done, business as usual, and bring in that new perspective that has been missing. Otherwise, our roles would not exist, and our companies see that and understand that. But I think our role is, how do we figure out what is that healthy amount of disruption where you don't get organ rejection, but you're also not missing out on bringing that perspective that you've been hired to do. So those two things most important. And in terms of, Greg, you're answering like your question in terms of what is transferable. Like there are things that are transferable, right? One, you have to build inclusive culture inside out. I think I learned that initially hard way, that you can't just focus on building a culture that just delivers accessible and inclusive products without hiring people with disabilities, without putting true focus and intention on creating a culture where all people with disabilities can thrive. Otherwise, you can't really, have an accessibility team and just working on creating accessible products without that inclusive culture. Two, this also I learned hard way. Mandatory trainings don't necessarily bring human behavior change. What does bring human behavior change is connection. And not only our responsibility is to bridge that connection and gap, right? Like we're bringing the voice of people with disabilities where the decision is being made. We're creating the connection there. We're connecting with our customers. We're connecting with our employees with disabilities. But one thing we don't talk enough about is connection with our stakeholders and our partners and empathy there, because they're doing their primary jobs. Sometimes they have accessibility as their goal. Sometimes they don't. A lot of times they don't. So having empathy and understanding of where they are at, our stakeholders, and meeting them where they are at and making them a partner on that journey and taking them along with us and not really leaving them behind. That's been my biggest learning.
That is such a big point,
Right?
Gurpreet. Yeah, wow. And it's so easy. I think this is probably true in smaller companies and even medium-sized companies, but it certainly can be true in large companies. It's so easy to become insular because there's so many people at these large companies you have to interact with that it becomes your full-time work just to answer the phone and emails and show up at meetings and respond. And so pretty soon you find yourself very quickly, oh, when was the last time I actually was in front of someone with a disability outside the company? When was the last time we actually set up those listening sessions, right? So this has to be, and this is absolute in the places I've been, like one of the first things when I go into a new company is find out, how are you listening? Like the first thing I ask is, how's customer care? Like, are you getting responses from outside? Are you funneling them to the right people? Are they getting a response? What are we hearing? What do we know? So I talk with my researchers, I talk with my customer care agents and find out like what is the state of things? Not what people tell me it is, but what's actually really happening. And you sort of work from there to figure out like, are we now proactively going out before products get made, when concepts are happening? Are we reaching out to disability organizations? Are we reaching out to individuals, to influencers? Are we paying attention to what people are posting on, obviously for us, social media? It's a big deal. So I think that we all take that for granted. Probably this audience listening is probably thinking, of course, like we want to be heard and we want to listen. But if you're in a place where you're leading that effort in a company, that has to be sort of absolute. Like you just can't do this stuff in a box. Like you really have to make sure that you're reaching out, and that goes in both directions, right? You also have to be communicating and sharing and marketing and telling people what you're up to. And it's in the different companies I've been at. Some of those have been really easy because the culture is there. And in other places, that's not the culture. And you have to establish that and you have to sort of drive that. And yeah, it's boy, you bring up so many good points there. I'll just share a quick story, I think, that sort of underlines what you were talking about, Gurpreet. I was at a company where the language of the company was numbers. It was data. In other companies, it was innovation, or it was ideas or concepts or social events or whatever it happened to be. But I kept making my case, and I knew I had the right case for why accessibility is important and how it was going to help the company and make products better and serve all these people and grow the market, like all these things we know, right? It was, and I knew that they heard me, but it wasn't landing. And I kept thinking, why is this not taking off? Why isn't it taking root? And I was new at the company. The longer I was there, the more I realized, because it's an engineering driven company and engineers want numbers. And I was making a case. I wasn't showing them the data. And then I dug deeper and realized, oh, it's because the data is all over the place. We didn't have a systematic, uniform way to measure accessibility across the company. It was in pockets, it was in places, it was for small projects. And so I realized very quickly, I realized very late, it seemed quick at the time. Wow, look at this great discovery. I need to put that in place. Like we need to get our arms around this. And we did. And it took more than a year of effort because it's a large kind of project. And once that happened, the culture changed. And I'm thinking, did I change to match the culture? The culture changed to match me, because suddenly accessibility is a thing. And what I realized was I had finally found that slipstream where I was speaking the language of the company and they were understanding what I was saying. And all those other arguments all made sense, but now they had the data to show it and move and act on it, because that's what they needed to tell their teams and managers. And I wasn't connecting the dots. I was thinking it was just us and them talking. No, it was us and them talking, and then them talking to their leaders. And their leaders were saying, show me the data. So that was a really insightful lesson when I went, wow, it wasn't so much about the data particularly, it's that's what the culture of the company needed. And that's what those leaders needed. And that was my job to figure out. And that takes time, but you start asking those questions sooner. The longer I've been in this work and the more companies I've been to, I start to recognize what are the right questions I need to ask up front instead of waiting to figure those things out. But that's a little bit of experience speaking. Hopefully people can learn a little bit from that.
Maybe between you and I, we can write a book on questions you ask for, and to, address what GW was saying. We figured it out. We're figuring it out every day.
And I should say those come with costs. Those are like, they're scars, right? There's painful. And I mean, we're laughing now because, of course, tragedy plus time equals comedy. That's how it works. And so we can laugh now, but trust me, without the time in between, it was tragedy. It was hard. It hurt. And you felt like, wow, I'm really messing this up. And a lot of people are depending on me to be good at this. And, and so if you're out there listening, like give yourself some space, allow yourself some time, but learn from people around you, because they can share those scars and those are the ones that mean you learn the hardest when you get hurt, right?
Oh yeah.
So those are some of the hard won lessons along the way.
Making
Absolutely.
mistakes is part of the learning journey. There is
Right.
no learning without mistakes. And I just want to again underline what, the beautiful example, Mike, you shared which is you have to meet, whether that's the culture, the company, bigger, your business leaders, where they are at, and, customize how you're approaching things. So for sure, agree to that. Like the three other things that I had written down that I wanted to share, and then want to see my kind of what your experience has been is, empathy, storytelling, processes, technology, all of that's great. But then ultimately it boils down to, in a few years, where my experience has been is, if accessibility is not in your workday or whichever system you use, right? Like your actual goals, no matter how much you train employees, no matter how much you try to sell them, no matter how much they are passionate about doing the work, if they are not being measured for accessibility along with everything else, the true needle doesn't really move.
That's right.
Is that what your experience has been as well?
Yeah, here's another one of those hard stories. You're
Okay.
so right. You're so
We're
right.
here for it,
We
Mike.
worked really hard because one of the things I mentioned was training. And so we built this beautiful training module and we used the latest technology for interaction. And it was gorgeous and it worked well and was fully accessible. And we had a beginning, a middle, and like an advanced module. And we had all this stuff. And we thought, oh, this is so good. We got such great feedback. Let's make it mandatory. And so we went and we arranged, we got leadership like, okay, let's teach all like 500 people in the company. Like, let's go make this mandatory. And we're like, this was awesome. We claimed victory. We're like, this is awesome. So many people now know how to like design for accessibility. And then about 3 to 6 months later, we went back and went, did it move? Did it get better? And we're like, no. And we're like, why not? And to exactly your point, it's like, because you forgot to set the goal to use it. So we went back 6 months later and we said, okay, well, now we've got a goal. So use all that training that you just got. And almost uniformly across the entire collection of people, they said, you know what? That training was so great and I loved it. And I don't remember any of it because I didn't use it. And we're like, oh, what a mistake, right? We needed to set the goal of saying, like, here's the reason you're taking that is not just to take the course, it's to put it into action. So when we set the goals and said, okay, you have a goal of achieving this with a product, then they're like, well, I need the training again. We're like, okay, we can do that again. And we did it again. We're like, oh, now I'm actually like getting my hands dirty. I'm in there using it and I'm realizing why that was taught this way and what I didn't learn, I need to go back for. And it just made, and that's what changed. So you're exactly right. If you don't set those targets as a company, and every company has their own goaling mechanism, could be in a team, could be at a division, it could be at an organizational level. Sometimes they're all three. But if you're not plugged into that, and sometimes you think we should have higher, stronger goals, whatever you can get, like get the first one and then nail it. And I think this comes back to maybe another lesson I'd love to share is, and I use the word credibility here. It might be sort of what you were talking about before, just with different language. But one of the things that's been an interesting lesson is when you have, especially a team that's focused on accessibility, that's costing the company headcount and dollars and real money and time. And if you don't return that value to that company, they're going to wonder why. Because I've seen teams be broken apart. They're like, we had a team, we're committed, everybody was lined up, and the team didn't deliver. And so building the credibility of actually delivering a product on time, working with a team well, so they appreciated the collaboration. It didn't feel like you slowed them down, that you were responsive, and that the outcome was a good outcome that was measurable. Even if it was a small thing, getting that first one right was really, really important. And I had this experience at multiple companies where the company was still new and fresh and trying to figure this out. And really what I realized later afterwards was people were trying to figure out, can I trust that group? Will they slow me down? Will they cost me as a product team? Will they cost me my schedule? Will they slow me down? Can I still report to the company the same monetization that we had? Like there's a business being run here and we have to map ourselves into that. And so learning the art, and there's painful lessons and some fun wins, but learning the art of mapping your accessibility work into the existing sort of business process to make sure you're actually delivering extra value, and it maybe even in some cases accelerating. Like the biggest wins we've heard back was, wow, and I remember this vividly, one of the engineering managers came to me, oh gosh, about a year after we had done some training for his whole team. And he said, you know what? I've moved to a new team and they're just not as like good at what they're doing yet. It's a new team. And he goes, I got to tell you this. He kind of pulled me aside. He goes, you know what? He goes, I don't know what it was, but last year when we came to the accessibility team and we had you guys train us on sensitivity to the user experience and people's needs, he goes, that team was so good at just building product, period. He goes, I miss it. Like I need that for this team. And so he was using us to actually be an accelerator to helping his team become more unified, more sensitive, more empathetic, and build better product, period. Of course, they would build it accessibly, but he goes, that wasn't even the main point. The main point was they're just better engineers. They were better designers. That was maybe the best compliment I ever got in my life. And I didn't think that's what we were actually doing. I thought we were just talking about accessibility at the time in those trainings, but I learned later that they had a way different impact on him personally and his perspective of accessibility. And it helped me understand that we were delivering much more than I thought we were. That was a huge lesson for me. And it was a really, you don't get those moments all the time, but when that one happened, it was just really, really meaningful.
Sharing a lot of really fantastic things around the setup, right? And I know that so over the last decade, I've seen hundreds of programs now, and it's all along the lines of what you described. There may be 100 different formulas for those, but
Yeah.
there's one thing I want to draw us back to make sure that I get you. This is the number one question that I get from everybody who's doing this, and it's the $1 million question because it's a question about $1 million. Um,
If I had $1 million,
how
what would I do with it? Is that the
Well,
question?
kind of, if I could get $1 million, what would I do with it is really the
Exactly.
question. And people want to know how do you get the initial funding? So we know we build empathy. We know we talk about the benefits of being accessible. And then we also know we talk about how to do it the right way, right? So if you shift left and do it earlier in the process, it's cheaper. But just getting that first piece of momentum with some funding, which means some people and means some time and means that those teams are going to do some of the things that you want them to do at that tactical level. Tell us how have you done that, or how are you doing that still? And Gurpreet, I'll start with you this time.
I of course can't really go into the specifics, so I'll be generic. And I think the answer to that also is not very different from what Mike and I are talking about, because even in my past three journeys, I had to start at different places in that journey. You know, for example, in Twitter, I can at least speak to the Twitter experience. The funding had already been assigned, so where I had to start from was creating the decision-making framework, establishing what truly accessibility would be responsible for, right? Like initially when Mike was explaining how his team worked, he described, I see in my head as we're the advocates of accessibility, right? So one question that comes up a lot in companies is the accessibility team accountable for something, or are they only acting as consultants? And again, I can't really give specific answers because the answers would actually lie company to company. But I think the questions we need to ask for is, what is the appetite and how does the leadership see accessibility team structured as? Is accessibility team going to have launch gating authority or not? Or do we only see accessibility as, the development team comes in and, engages with accessibility if they want to, or if they don't want to, right? Because a lot of that then depends, what is the team you're going to structure? What is the type of funding that you need? What's the type of technology that you need? And then alignment with your leadership's vision is the most crucial part, because I work for a lot of different leaders over past 10 years. And without that, sometimes it might feel like you're running a nonprofit in a for-profit company, and that misalignment can happen. So really understanding the space you're part of, what are the company OKRs, what is your own vision, right? Like the alignment of your vision with the company OKRs is extremely important. And then building the business case off of that. And then there are things that you can do. Are there contractual commitments with customers? What is the legal landscape? Where do you provide business? ADA versus European Accessibility Act versus accessibility for Ontarios with disability. The landscape is huge. So gathering all of that data, are there settlements? Are there lawsuits? Getting all of that information and putting the case together in the language that the company speaks, which is the story that Mike shared, is extremely important, which in my experience, all three companies I work with, that business case looked completely different. And a lot of the times when you land, you have some idea, things that have worked well, things that have not worked well, but a lot of the actual approach you learn and design when you're on the job and you're learning from your stakeholders and you're trying to understand how that company works.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very good. Hey, Mike, I'm going to come over to you, but real quick, I want to ask Gurpreet just a quick yes or no. Possible to have an effective accessibility program in a company without senior leadership buy-in? By that I mean C-suite and just below.
How do you define effective, right? Like if you truly wanna, you can build accessibility initiatives and momentums at grassroots level, yes. But if you truly wanna move the needle, you do need that leadership buy-in. Otherwise, it will not happen. It will cause disruption.
Great answer. Okay, Mike.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm still you're quotable, Gurpreet. You might be thinking you're running a nonprofit and a for-profit company. That's still ringing in my ears. Man, we could have a whole session just on that topic. Is, what does that mean and how does that work? And I think you're right. That's another pitfall or trap too. Yeah, so look, I think if you're hired into a role that's like accessibility person and that's your focus, you're way past, is the company committed? Is there an executive buy-in? Like nobody posts a role, no manager commits to using one of their really rare and valued headcount to get dedicate to this if there's not some prior discussion, some agreement that there's going to be some outcome, that sort of thing. I think you hit on a really good point, which is even consultants, if a company's like, are you, responsible or are you just a consultant? I think even consultants, if we were hired to them, we expect outcome, like we expect a deliverable. So that's not even an out. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm just consulting on this and it doesn't really matter, I don't really control what the team does. No, you do. Like it does matter. And how you lead that state or how you account for yourself and what you delivered actually does make a big difference. I'll tell a quick story here. When I came to Yahoo, this is the company was going through turmoil. It had changed hands. The accessibility team, which was famous at the time, had left. It went under new leadership, several gyrations, and they asked me to come in. Can you kind of reboot this? So it was me and one amazing guy. And we sat in a room on the farthest building away from the headquarters they could put us. We were literally, it was previously a file cabinet room. Like it was, we just looked at her like, this is awesome, but like, how are we going to do this? And I'll remember this vividly. We had this afternoon, we said, okay, we got to really sit down and think this through. And so we took a 6-foot by 4-foot whiteboard and we took an ink marker and I said, write down every product of this company makes. And let's figure this out. And we wrote down in columns, and that board was filled with hundreds of products. And we looked at each other and I said, how many do you think the two of us can get done? And we circled one. And we're like, people expect a lot more from us. This is a larger company. Like, how are we going to, like, this isn't right. But we both looked at each other and said, you know what? If we can get one and we can do it great, and we can build that credibility with that team, and we can show that this works, we can get the second one. And if we can get the second one, the third one will follow. And we'll figure out what happens by that point. And so that's literally what we did. And it turned out the one we chose was Yahoo Mail. And Yahoo Mail had previously been pretty good, but it was a complete rewrite, new code, new everything. And we picked Yahoo Mail on the iPhone because we thought iPhone at that time, about a decade ago, was really big, super up and coming. It was all new stuff. And effectively, I went to the VP and said, we need to get this right. And he's like, we've never done this. I don't know how to do this. I don't have anybody to do this. And I just kept coming back to him and I said, look, I was the head of accessibility, the one person, right? And we had one person on our team. I said, I will personally sit with that engineer. You give me one engineer for 6 months. I will personally sit with them every single day until we get this right. And so he said, okay. Finally, they just said, fine, get out of my hair. Just go and do it. And I sat down with this engineer who had never done accessibility work in his life and walked him through it. And we have great stories about how he learned to do this. But effectively, the long end of the story is he got it done in half the time and it was great. And everyone was shocked. They were like, I didn't know you could do this. And I didn't know what good looked like. We never had an example. But from that one small thing, we were able to put him on stage in front of his engineering division, talking about his win and how he engineered this. And everybody went, wow, if that guy can do it, I could probably do it. And I want to be on stage. And all of a sudden, he became this hero for doing something that had never been done. The VP was like, this is awesome. I love this. This is great. We're getting good feedback. We obviously, invested ourselves in people outside the company to help consult and that sort of thing. But I just use that story because it was so illustrative to me of, get the one example you can always point to within the company. And so wherever we went after that, we said, we'll go look at Yahoo Mail. We'll go look at Yahoo Mail. We'll go talk to the engineer. We'll go look at that slide deck. Go watch that presentation. We had one great example of great. Everybody could go, okay, that's the bar. And some teams got there and some teams didn't. Eventually, Yahoo Sports, Yahoo News, Fantasy Sports got to that place. But it just sort of allowed us to feel like, you know what, if we got fired tomorrow, at least we could say we left it with one great app, right?
You got one.
We knew that app was used by millions of people. And so we were helping people, and we were coming up with a win, and we were building that credibility. And so whenever somebody, vice president, was like, I don't know, I said, go talk to their vice president. Look what happened. He'll vouch for this. And he's like, yeah, he did. And so it just started to take off. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons. I made some mistakes along the way, but learned some valuable lessons about how to work at the executive level and what he needed and how we helped him make his case and say, hey, we delivered this cool thing. And of course, not to be forgotten is the response from people outside the company was, wow, this is really cool. We want more. And making sure as that accessibility advocate that we were bringing that in and saying, not only did you do great work, but you're getting credit for doing that great work. People are responding to this. They're using your product and they're referencing it. And so you build that flywheel effect and pretty soon it starts to take off. And I've seen that happen with VoiceOver when I was at Apple, with Yahoo Mail at Yahoo, and with automatic alt text, in fact, at Meta on Facebook, where we auto-generate alternate text for images and things. And those little examples have grown to be giant things. So that's one of the big lessons.
VoiceOver is not a little example. It's awesome. I love it and use it all the time.
Great.
I mean, you see people using it. I mean, just fantastic things.
We're looking back on this. When we launched it, we literally thought, I have no idea if anyone will use this or anyone will care. Like at that time, people were like, it's on a Mac. Who uses a Mac? Nobody uses a Mac. So like, this is just like a little tempest in a teapot. Nobody's going to care. And they did. Like that was the miracle, is that people actually did respond to it and think this is actually pretty cool. And of course, when you think of VoiceOver now, you think of the phone, but we couldn't have done the phone VoiceOver. We hadn't done the Mac VoiceOver. And so all that effort of getting that one product right fed into the next one. And then all of a sudden we're on this platform that's changing the planet. And who knew? Nobody knew. Even when I'll just give you a little insider tip. When we launched the phone, inside we're like, this could be the hugest hit or the worst disaster. It was a flip of a coin. We really didn't know.
And now you know the rest of the story. So these are incredible things. I've got a colleague who says occasionally he'll say it's a great time to be blind. And what he means by that is he means he has options, right? He has all these options now out in front of him. And that's, I think, everything you've talked about just leads us to that. Now, as I knew when I asked for 3 hours for this session from the AXCON controllers, I wasn't going to get 3 hours, and time has flown by. And hopefully everyone's got an outstanding example of how they can go back and do some things. But I do want to take a few of the audience questions here. And I've got, Jen has been watching these for me. She's feeding them through. It's almost like I got to pick them out of a little fishbowl here. This is an interesting one because I haven't heard this before. And the question is, do you have examples of accessibility being part of people's job description? Now, I don't think that they're talking about accessibility experts. I think they're talking about other people. Says, I am looking to work with HR on including it in role descriptions, goals, etc. Who wants to, any comments or thoughts on that?
So real quick, not a lot. I mean, that's right. But I think I'm starting to see product inclusion roles, that are actually design specific, that are not like accessibility roles. I saw a bunch of those with Google. I have seen accessibility related marketing roles that are actually, it's a marketing role and their focus is going to be either on accessibility or inclusion in general or disability inclusion at a wide variety of companies. So I think it's popping up. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's pretty similar. I've seen a lot of the activity in the sort of when people are posting these roles and saying, job requirements, must have X years of experience, know how to code. And we're starting to see more of, experience with WCAG guidelines or accessibility testing tools or coding for accessibility as one of the things that makes candidates stand out in the crowd. So for example, if somebody's applying for a technical program manager or product manager role, and in their other interests or other activities, they're listing accessibility, like we pull that out. They're like, that's still, unfortunately, all too rare. And that's a unique skill set. It's hard to train. Obviously, it takes time and effort. If they can come ready with that, that's fantastic. In terms of the roles, like personally, I love it when people have accessibility as a part of their role. Because again, I want as many people as possible to be in these other roles in the company, but bring an accessibility perspective to it. So that's awesome. And it turns out, and again, I can kind of only speak to the enterprise level kind of company in this respect. it is kind of common to see like one part of the role is, accessibility testing or accessibility road mapping or accessibility, whatever it is. Typically, it's in things like marketing. Like our marketing person isn't just for accessibility messaging; it's for other marketing activities. But they're the expert, or they're the community, relationship manager, or something like that. So, I think this is one of those things we're going to see over time shifting more. Like the difference between when I first started like 15 or 20, 30 years ago, there was nothing. Like you would never see accessibility in a role. And now you see it kind of all over the place. And I kind of forget, like, oh, actually, this is a thing now. Like it's more common. I think that's one of the big trends, and that's exciting.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, we've got time, I think, to squeeze one more in. Jen has a great one, so I'm going to let Jen read this out. And I forget we're in competition here. We'll have a toss up. I don't have a buzzer. I guess raise your hand or something. But anyway, Jen, go ahead. Now, this is a doozy of a question. We're not going to get to the whole thing, but we'll do it as good as we can. Jen?
Yes, absolutely. So there's been multiple questions and upvotes about what accessibility structure looks like in each of your companies. How are you doing it? What's the best way to do it that you've found? So go for it.
I'll go quick and concise. There's no best way. I think it goes back to culture eats strategy for breakfast. There is no best way. It depends on the company. And I'm on that journey in MasterCard. So for example, in Twitter, we had hub and spoke model, right? I led the accessibility center of excellence, which was part of our people organization. Our focus was, people, policy, standards, trainings, as well as like the employee side of the house. But then I had a sister spoke within the product organization that focused on accessibility of Twitter as Twitter all we know it. And, my team took care of rest of it. And that's what worked for Twitter at that point of time. Would it work for Twitter today? Who knows? There's no Twitter today. In Charter, we had more of a centralized team, right? And at that point of time, I think the time around when I left, so it was part of product and design organization, and we were truly embedded into our product development, design processes, testing processes. But we were also trying to expand outside of the design organization and get into customer support, get into our stores accessibility, start to work with our DEI on people processes. And there are challenges. Accessibility has to report somewhere, right? Either you can separate it out and put it in different organizations, which I think is what happens in Google. And there's going to be pros and cons of every approach. If it's decentralized, then your challenge is going to be, are the different accessibility teams in different business units talking to each other and truly implementing accessibility in the same way? If you create a centralized accessibility team and it only reports under one structure, then your challenge is going to be, there are microcultures in companies, and it's going to be hard for you to influence accessibility in business units that you are actually truly not part of. So long story short, there's no best way. I think the best way has to be designed for that company.
Mike,
Yeah,
2 minutes.
Yeah, no, totally nailed it. There's not much to add to that. That's exactly right. I have seen it be successful where it's centralized. I've seen it successful decentralized. I've seen it successful using outside organizations like DQ. Like there is no cookie cutter here. And I think what I want people to take home from that is not that, oh man, what am I going to do? There's no best model. The answer is there's no excuse. Like you can make this work in whatever organization you're in. You just have to keep applying pressure to different parts until you get that breakthrough. But you can be successful no matter what. There's nothing stopping you. It can work in multiple ways. And just as another example, I didn't even have the role of accessibility when I was at Apple. I was a product manager working on OS 10 and iOS. And someone came to my door and said, could you solve this problem? And all of a sudden I'm like proposing voiceover, and off we went, and we'd have this product. And then pretty soon there's nobody else who knows this. Can you do other things? And pretty soon it was like kind of after the fact that someone said, I think you're the head of accessibility now. And I'm like, what? When did that happen? Like, I don't know, but like, you're it, and you keep showing up. And
yeah.
So eventually
you would be surprised.
Like, oh, yeah. So be careful what you ask for, right? But I think that's
surprised on how often that happens, Mike.
Yeah, I know. Don't point to me at that. It's really the fact that in any role you have, if you have the passion and you apply yourself, it can become what you want it to be over time. And so you can be successful in small ways or in big ways, but the big things don't start big usually. The big things usually start small.
Go. My boss says my boss says, "Hey, we have this accessibility thing," and I say the stupid question, "How many people is it?" He's like, "Oh, it's 2 people." I'm like, "Sure, I'll do it, no problem." Right? All right, Jen, wrap us up. Fantastic job, Mike and Gurpreet. Thank you, Jen.